setting like this. Most of the time it's, like a huge room with a lot of people in it. And so I'm excited about you actually being able to ask questions and being able to pop into the chat, as we go along. So housekeeping items, I guess, around that, for questions and stuff like that. Pop any questions that you have in the chat. And if I see something that pops up as I'm going along and I feel like it's relevant to address it right then I will. For the most part, I'm going to do, we're going to kind of take a break about halfway through, a little 5-minute break, and I'll go through and I'll catch up on the questions and see then, and then we'll have a longer amount of time at the end for questions, and I'll stick around and answer whatever you guys, whatever you have for me. So I am on the West Coast right now, so it's a lot earlier for me than it is for all of you. So yeah, and we'll still, still daylight and all that for a while. Okay, let's go ahead, and that's my 5-minute mark. I'm going to go ahead and dive in because I got a lot of content to talk to you about today. And let me go ahead and see if I can share my screen. And can you see that? Can I get some nods or something to let me know? And then if that's all good, then I am going to rock and roll. Okay.
Looks beautiful.
Say what?
Looks beautiful.
Yay. Oh, good.
Don't forget to drink water.
This is my daughter who's graduating this weekend. So we've been in very full senior mode, senior focus, running around here this week. That is a QR code to my Instagram page. If you want to take a quick screenshot of that, you can reach out to me on Instagram via DMs. If you have, like questions that you don't think of today during the day, you can reach out and let me know later. And then also, I'll have some resources to email you after the course is over today. And so I'm going to send you a posing guide, and I'm also going to send you a PDF that talks about poses that I avoid. And so both of those resources will come into your inbox. And this is a different little QR code. Just go there and get on the class list for this so that I have your email address and I can email you those free posing guides. So PDF and then another one. And if you need to just take a quick screenshot, that's cool too. And then we're going to get right into it. All right. So if you're not from the US, and maybe some of you are not from around here or from Canada or whatnot like that, then I want to make sure that I clear up all the expectations before we begin. Because when I walked into my very first senior photography course about, oh my gosh, it was over a decade ago, this is what I was expecting. So the course was called Watch Me Edit Seniors, and I thought that I'd be learning how to edit photos of octogenarians and capture the really raw grit of time that was written as a story all across their face. And then I realized really quickly that it's actually something very different. And so I was just blown away. Oh my gosh, they are talking about high school seniors. I thought we were going to learn how to Photoshop the wrinkles off of a pensioner, and this lady started talking about cloning out acne instead and flyaway hairs. So this for me was a really serendipitous mistake, because the first images started coming up and I just felt like I had been bowled over, because these were teenagers like my kids, the kids that I would meet with every Wednesday night, every Sunday morning, whose ball games and dance recitals and band concerts I would never miss. These are just like the kids who practically lived in my house, who ate all of my food, and on one infamous occasion even jumped on my couch. Well, that part I wasn't really thrilled about, but I'll keep bringing it up because I'm not bitter at all about that. So through this course, my eyes are really open to a growing genre that I'd never really dreamed had existed. And I've loved it every minute since. So if you're joining us here today and a little worried, whoa, wait, what have I gotten myself into? Welcome, just kind of stick it out with me. And hopefully I'll have you just as much in love with this approach to photographing these emerging adults as I am. If you're not new to senior photography as a concept, or maybe, offering it in your business already, want to also welcome you. You're in the right place to learn. I'm an open book about all things seniors, and I'm just really glad that you're all here. So that brings us to our topic today. This is the authentic approach to senior photography. And I'm really, really glad that Natasha reached out to me to come and talk to you all today. I've been so excited about this for months, and it's just all it's going to be all good from here. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction. My name is Mary Vance. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And yes, I get asked this all the time, but yes, everybody actually does call me by both names. I used to say that I wasn't sure why it was, and then at some point we kind of identified that the teenagers that I would work with, if they said, like Mary across the room, I wouldn't respond. There were so many Marys everywhere. But when they yelled Mary Vance, it got my attention a lot faster than anyone else. And so it ended up, kind of sticking. That's my kind of my sports name. I am a photographer, videographer, educator, and business coach, and I'm based in Sammamish, Washington, which we were talking about earlier, which is in the suburbs of Seattle. I have a not so light case of South mouth. I'm actually from North Carolina, and it only makes itself more obvious, my accent, when I'm really excited, or I've recently been home, or if I've been talking to my family. I've done all of those today. My mom is here, so and I was in North Carolina just the other week, and all of this. So you're going to hear it. I apologize in advance. I've worn a lot of different hats in my adult life, and it's part of my belief that each time we transition into a new version, a new iteration of ourselves, we take a little piece of that previous life with us into the next phase. So these few specific job titles and roles have had more of an impact on where I am, especially when it comes to seniors and senior photography, than some of the other ones. So I was a dancer. I danced from age 2 to 27, and I had a 10-year career as a dance teacher before I retired. The reason that this comes in with my senior photography is because this really helps me with posing a lot. Demonstrating body movement comes really naturally to me, and I see my whole posing workflow as a choreography of the session. I've been an educator. I've taught high school science. I've taught photography classes, small groups, homeschool led co-op classes. I homeschooled my own kids for a decade. And so I'm really familiar with working with the teenage age range. And I've mentored youth for almost 2 decades, which really means that I've put the work and research into everything that I'm going to talk to you about today. I've done this directly by having kids in my own home, in my table, at my table, or in group coaching together. And I've also worked indirectly on behalf of youth as a member of a board of directors for a local nonprofit. Working on that board of directors, my job was to keep youth and youth programs at the forefront of everything that we did. So again, why is all of this relevant? I'm not saying all of this to, give you my resume, but to let you know and understand that everything that I'm going to be talking to you about today, I've actually done the research. I've walked the walk with these kids. I want you to know that I'm not just telling you like, oh, this is kind of how I feel about it, but that you can trust that this approach is really grounded in doing the work. So in my business, I focus on being what I call an inclusive senior photographer, and we're going to discuss more about exactly what I mean when I say this. I photograph about 40 seniors a year between the months of July and October. I photograph and film a handful of other genres as well. I do schools and fine art photography, brands, and some families, usually only when it's attached to a senior, but seniors are my specialty. So let me back up for just a real quick second. Let's talk about this mindset shift that is kind of the key to my approach. 14 years ago, my husband got a new job, and we packed up our entire lives and moved 3,000 miles across the country to Seattle. We knew no one here, and I knew nothing about the area. I found photography as a way to break myself out of a creative rut from being so terribly alone that first year. I had given up my dance career, and we had moved on, away from our entire support system. And so it took about a year, and then I found photography. So when I got my first DSLR, I did what every other mom with the camera was doing. I was photographing my own kids, but my kids were 4 and 5 years old at the time, and they simply did not have the patience for me to futz around and learn settings. Right? I don't know if any of you are parents, but so these kids were some of my first subjects. Now they're all grown and flown now and hashtag adulting. Honestly, it always makes me a little bit emotional. Some of these kids are married and engaged. Some of them I even have to call doctor now when I address them. And they have really just made a huge difference in the world. And some of them have passed. And so sorry, I get a little about a year ago, one of these gentlemen, the guy who's got his hands out down there in the corner, like just hanging out. He passed away, and I was able to go back and pull photos that I had of him from when he was that age for them to include in his memorial service last year, and be able to gift those to his family. So as I was saying, I was serving as a youth mentor, and it was just so much fun to have teens who were really willing and even excited to pose for me and to be in front of my camera, even if I was fumbling around with settings, and I was getting a lot of good practice in with them. And so this was kind of the beginning of my shift towards specializing in senior photography. So I kind of timidly started advertising myself as a senior photographer, and some of those same kids who I was investing time in to mentor and support started asking me to take their senior photos. This is Hannah. This sweet girl was my very first paid senior photo shoot, and her picture is still on the on my homepage of my website, because this was a turning point for me, and it's such an integral part of my why. I remember Hannah came to me, and she offered me like twice as much as I had been shooting hours long events for. And she said, you know, she's like, well, a lot of my friends are doing something different, but I just can't imagine doing this with anybody else but you. And so, you know, it was like hard eyes exploding everywhere. And what it helped me to realize is that my purpose for senior photography is in the people. I didn't want the stress of photographing weddings. I didn't have the patience to be a landscape photographer, and I definitely did not like newborns enough to lean into baby photography. But every single time that I met a new senior, I was absolutely filled with passion and excitement. And so I completely niched down, and I stopped taking requests for events and babies and weddings. And I focused myself 100% on senior photography in a way that really ignited my passion and inspired my art. And honestly, I've never looked back since then. This is fun for me. This is the kind of job where, you know, I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you love what you do, it doesn't even feel like work. And sometimes it really doesn't. I love connecting with this age range, and talking about them. Honestly, you can't get me to shut up about it. uh, so now you know who I am and why I became a senior photographer. Like I said, I believe it's important to know these little steps in the journey so that you can understand that the approach that I'm going to be teaching you about today is truly different and unique, especially within the senior industry. This mindset shift was a long time coming for me, and I'm a believer in it now because it absolutely works. So let's talk about what we're covering today. I'm a teacher at heart, as I mentioned. So, you know, there's going to be an outline. We're going to take a deep dive into my approach to senior photography. It is a total mindset shift that helped me become completely aligned and passionate about my work. I'm going to walk you through my session workflow for posing. Next, we're going to talk about all the ways that you can actually do the thing, right? Some of the back end, behind the scenes stuff that will help you with your senior process, like client booking, pricing, packages, etc. And finally, I'm going to address a few senior specific considerations to keep in mind. So let's dive in. Okay, so either nod if you're on video, or pop in the chat if you've ever been intimidated by the idea of photographing teenagers, or of talking to a 17-year-old, right? Or posing them. There is a reason why there's so many photographers that kind of balk at the idea of high school seniors as subjects, because I mean, being a teenager that's, you know, on the cusp of adulthood, you're kind of angsty, it's kind of intense, it can be complicated. And I have never met an adult who has said to me, you know what? I really would just love to go back to high school. Right? Nope. None of us want to repeat that time in life, because getting to graduation, setting yourself up for a bright future, it's a lot of hard work. And then the world that these kids are inheriting, it's got some problems too. So whether they're college bound or taking a gap year or carving their own path through entrepreneurship, or work, seniors are really excited to go out and become who they were meant to be. So here's a list of some of the most common complaints that I hear about senior photography, and I'm going to tell you why none of these should ever get in your way. Okay, I hear people say all the time that you have to offer editorial magazine style photo shoots. You guys, most of these kids have actually never picked up a magazine. Do you realize that? Like physically picked up a magazine? Some people say that you have to get a few of the popular kids in your door in order to be successful at it. You do not. You might have to style your seniors or have a really complicated couture closet that you have to keep up with all the latest fashion trends, or that you have to have a model team in order for senior photography to even be profitable. This one I'm really big about. Myth busting that one. Maybe you feel like you have to know the latest trends on TikTok or keep up with all the Gen Z slang. Anybody know what yeet means? Yes, maybe. Good. Nope. That's okay. Sometimes it feels like it's all, just a little too intense or clicky, like you're back in high school. The competition can be cutthroat, or like maybe like you might be thinking, oh, there's already a senior photographer in my area. Because I always say that I don't have competition, I have industry peers, and I will teach my method to a photographer that lives 5 miles from my door. And I am absolutely okay with that. What's meant for me, the seniors who are meant for me, they will never pass me by. And then the last myth that we're going to bust today is, like feeling like you're not cool enough. One of those teenagers' most beloved mentors ever is an almost 60-year-old banking operations manager, right? And if you want to talk about like what do these two have in common, right? And you would think that it would be nothing, but trust me, if he is cool enough to, to hang with the youth, then you are too. Okay, so let's talk about this authentic approach and what do I actually mean. So I hear this word tossed around kind of often, and some people say maybe it's lost a little bit of its meaning over time. When I say the authentic approach, you can also think of it as taking an inclusive and a lifestyle approach, right? Lifestyle, that terminology is common in brand photography, and I'm just applying it to a different genre, because we can call our art anything we want to call it. I'm just going to borrow some familiar terminology from the industry here. In lifestyle photography, you are directed into natural movements in places you would really go, in clothing that you would actually wear, right? Lifestyle photography aims to capture you organically. It's you on a good day. So why an authentic or lifestyle approach to senior photography? Well, when I first began photographing seniors, no one was doing this. And again, even today, the senior photography industry sometimes seems to be all about exclusive experiences, couture fashion, and editorial editing. It can be cliquish and competitive, and sometimes feel more like you're back in high school yourself rather than among professionals and adults. And I know that you've probably already seen or experienced this, and that might be part of the reason that you're in this seminar today. So let's think about some of those myths, or let's think about those model teams, actually, and senior representatives. I've heard them called street crews, brand ambassadors. Now, I want to put a little star here. I recognize that the strategy works really well for some. And the beauty of the photography world is that it's so diverse that you can find, somebody just even, on the next day who's, who this works really well for. But when I dig really deeply into my why as an artist, or actually more as a human being who loves getting to know other human beings, that doesn't align for me. So I think about that word model, and we apply it to a model airplane, a model building, a model Lego Millennium Falcon, right? We use that word for a product or an inanimate object. A model is a thing, not a person. And if we carry out that connotation on the word, a model is also something that is perfect. right? It's a standard that the mere mortals, among us, the regular humans, cannot obtain, but are consistently being compared to. So using model teams is also to me, a huge proclamation of exclusivity, right? Only those who look a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way, have X number of followers on Instagram are welcomed into the fold. And teenagers will really notice the subtleties. And that's probably at the heart of one of the most intimidating things about them, is that they notice. They will root out if you are being disgenuine and insincere in a heartbeat. So while model teams and senior photography strategies that are based on them are all about exclusivity, my authentic approach is all about inclusivity. When I think about the seniors who I want to photograph, I'm thinking about the other 99% who do not necessarily fit into a narrow model mold. What would happen to them in that traditional model? They just are left out. They don't see themselves in the images that the photographers are presenting in their portfolios. I believe that everybody deserves a chance to be celebrated in this. This is a milestone moment of their transition from childhood to adult. And so when I think about who I want included in my senior work and in my senior portfolios, I think about the kids who have a D in math, or maybe are neurodiverse, have ADHD, identify themselves outside of the pink is for girls and blue is for boys stereotypes. I think about neurodivergency, gender fluidity, those with differently abled bodies. I think about the kids who would, as I mentioned, eat at my table or text me at random times of the day and share, kind of their hopes and fears with me about this whole adulting thing. So I always say I photograph real teenagers, and that's what I show in my portfolios. If I have an image release, they will go in my portfolio, whether they look like a model or fit a certain mold or not. This style of senior photography is not about the location, the wardrobe, or slapping a filter on it. It's about the person who is directly in front of my lens. This precious human who, for just one small moment in their lives, gets to have the entire focus of a moment on themselves. That's a really beautiful thing. And I've heard some pushback before, Mary Vance, hey, look, you can't be friends with every single client. And of course, that's not what I'm suggesting at all, but you can be friendly and kind to anyone who seeks out your services. You can respect the light in another human being and still maintain professional boundaries. For example, you wouldn't photograph like a wedding where you don't talk to the bride the whole time. The same thing is true with seniors. You can capture them exactly as they are without having to join in the group chat, you can make them feel amazing and seen, and then make another senior feel amazing and seen the same way the next day. It doesn't lessen anyone's experience. So you don't have to be their friend or BFF in order to treat them as something other than a model, a product, or a thing for you to play with for the day. And I understand some people take the approach of saying, well, why don't we make the seniors see themselves as a model? But that's not everyone's aspiration. I don't want to look like what I see on the cover of a magazine. And that's not even touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of inclusion for people of color and minorities to see themselves represented on those same magazine covers. And the vast majority of students don't want to be seen as a model either. So it's only logical for us, the photographer, to change our approach rather than trying to change the mind of our clients, right? That would just be poor marketing. I want senior photography that is accessible, approachable, and appealing to that 99%. This can be so over the top sometimes that a friend of mine and I like to joke that we'll see, on Instagram, these seniors who have like hired a helicopter to parachute in to a remote location for their and it just being too intense. Fly to Paris for a photo shoot in front of the Louvre dressed as Marie Antoinette. I have actually seen this in senior photography, people doing this as a model shoot. It just seems excessive. The model teams and the styled shoots and the spend more money than it costs to have a small wedding on closet updates. And for me, it's just too much. It was not in alignment with the kind of person that I am in real life. And it certainly wasn't the type of person that those same kids who wanted to come over for a Frozen sing-along and have a cuddle puddle in the middle of my living room were aspiring to be. So I decided to start calling my senior photography lifestyle and teaching about my authentic approach because it more closely aligned with my passion and mission to make a greater impact on the humans I photographed. To me, lifestyle senior photography is natural. It should be authentic. It should be connected. To me, this is honestly just breathing easily and expressing joy in seeing another human find their place in this big, big world. My seniors do not care who designed their purse, but they do care about snuggling with their sweet puppy or their cat. You guys, this is Bruno. I almost died when McKenna brought Bruno, the cat, to her senior photo shoot. He is a Maine Coon and he's like 90% feral. And we were out in this location where the squirrels, birds, and all things, all small critters that kitties love to play with were this was so awesome. My seniors don't have to be the star quarterback. But they want to know what it feels like to be a part of a team or a pack or a brotherhood. My seniors look at their moms and say, I love you really freely and have zero hesitation whatsoever when I say, okay, now bear hugger, right? When you photograph someone in a lifestyle manner, you're showing them just that. You're showing the things that matter so much in their lives that they live for them, that this is what their life is about. And here's what happened the minute that I embraced this vision for what senior photography could be like. I started booking my calendar out every year. I am sold out before they even go back to school in the fall. We are having graduations here this week in Washington, and I only have one session left on my calendar for the entirety of fall, right? So I'm always booked out before they even go back to school. I had mothers coming to me to specifically asking for me because they wanted their kid to look like their kid in their photos. I had other photographers asking me, how was I even able to do this in such a unique way? How could I be successful with this? My business flourished, and so did I when I began living into my artistic passion. I believe that the authentic approach to senior photography can work for many other senior photographers as well, because I believe that deep down in my heart of hearts, any human and these seniors, these emerging adults as well, really wants is to feel seen and known and loved for themselves, and only themselves, without needing a trick of the light or sleight of hand, but for another human to just simply say, okay, I see you. So that's my why, that's my purpose for myself, and hopefully even you, if this is resonating. Because like I said earlier, I really won't shut up about it. I won't stop shouting it from the highest mountains. These kids are important and significant, and I am inviting you to embrace that thought every time that you pick up your camera to capture one. All right, so let's talk about setting the tone for organic interactions and some conversation skills. I want you to imagine how a senior might feel when they step out of their car and directly in front of your camera, possibly not knowing you or your work or what to expect from the day, right? Because we know a lot of times moms will just book, right, who they want or what they like, and the kid might not have had any say in it at all. But how do you think that they feel? I hear so many photographers or even people in general say that they have anxiety around speaking to seniors. Like, I'm worried we won't connect and they won't have fun. What if I'm not cool enough? What if we have nothing in common? But as we've said, these seniors are just everyday normal human beings. And just like you and me, they're going to be worried about what? They're going to be worried, what am I going to look like in this picture, right? So from my very first interaction, before I even step foot on location, all of my communication and education with my seniors is driven at easing those fears. I need to let them know that I'm going to make them look good and not in a slap a filter on it kind of way. Or my friend Sandra Cohn once said, I never want to send the message that you need a filter in order to be beautiful. So it's our job from minute one to let these seniors know that we see them as beautiful, and we're going to capture that on camera. okay, wait a minute. So how exactly do I make someone feel comfortable, right? Like that might be the first thing. Okay, wait, how do I do this? We've never met. We don't have anything in common to talk about. If you're like me, you might be thinking, I am a 40-year-old millennial, almost empty nester mom of two. How on earth am I going to connect to a 17-year-old teenage boy, right? And here's the big thing. All you need to do is to give them permission to be themselves. And I'm gonna say that again because it's that important. In a world where everyone has and freely imposes an opinion about everyone else, you get the honor and the privilege to say to the person who's stepping in front of your camera, I see you just as you are, and just as you are is wonderful and worthy. Because remember, we're not here to make our clients beautiful. We're here to show them that they already are beautiful. Whether they are a star athlete, a bookworm, or failing math, we are there to capture the true version of these humans who trust us. So this is Mark. We're gonna do a little case study here. Mark showed up at a senior photo session with mom, a friend, and a backpack that was stuffed absolutely to the brim. And I saw that backpack and I had like a little panic struck moment of terror because I thought he was about to start pulling all of his clothing out of this backpack. And I was like, that is going to be wrinkled and it's going to look horrible. And this is where my head's going. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And so I said, okay, Mark, what are we working with today? Mark's answer was, I bought a bag of props. And I was like, oh, okay. Thinking like, what could possibly be in here? I thought he was joking. Well, when he started pulling all the props out of item after item out of his bag, I realized that Mark was dead serious. Mark brought a puppet, a Lego version of Chris Pratt from Jurassic Park, a t-shirt from his favorite stand-up comedian, and of course his trusty lightsaber. I looked over at Mark's mom and she just did this. She said, I want one good picture for the yearbook. He can do whatever he wants after that. I was like, all right. I had the absolute best time that I have ever had on a photo shoot. Oh my gosh, you guys, this was just amazing. We got creative and silly and crazy. And the entire time I was just capturing who this human actually was. Don't worry, mom got her nice photo for the yearbook. She got several, in fact, and then she got giant bear hugs from her son at the end of the session. So I want you to start observing your senior before you even take the cap off of your lens. What is their body language saying? Do they seem shy? Are they fidgeting with their clothing? Do they make eye contact when they speak to you? Do they allow their parent to do most of the speaking for them? Are they speaking loudly and smiling a lot? Do they initiate any conversation? Are they wringing their hands? Are they having trouble walking in their shoes? This happens more often than you know. I have no idea why these girls think it is a good idea to wear heels on rocky Pacific Northwest beaches, but they do all the time. I'll never understand it. But I just want you to start observing the energy that they're bringing and then meet them where they are. So you're going to match their energy like you're a chameleon who changes colors to adapt to the situation. And this is when you get that natural connected interaction. Now, this doesn't mean that you'll never get like nervous before a photo shoot. Absolutely not. I've been working with teenagers for over 2 decades now, and I still get a little nervous sometimes before shoots. And I feel like that, nervous excitement can propel us to even create some of our very best art. But over time and with practice, you will become really skilled at the art of observation, and making your seniors comfortable with you every single time. All right, maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you haven't had the practice or even opportunity to develop these skills and still don't know what to say when talking to a teenager. I completely understand that, and I'm right here with you. No one starts out intuitively knowing all the right things to say. And while I won't give you a script to memorize, I'm going to give you some guidelines for how to approach all of your conversation with your senior clients. So first of all, know that teenagers, just like adults, want someone who will actually listen to them. And when I say listen, I mean genuinely hear what they have to say. I often ask my own kids, if we're having a conversation, are you listening to understand or are you listening to respond? right? We can get so caught up in being prepared with our answers, or like, oh, God forbid there's an awkward, quiet moment, right? We can totally embrace the quiet moments. But sometimes we get so caught up in being ready and having the next thing prepared to speak that we don't actually hear what the other person is saying. We can be too busy, get into our own minds preparing what we're going to do next, or what pose or which place we're going to go. So when you're talking to a senior, I want you to be prepared to really slow down and listen. I want you to practice asking more thoughtful questions. Now, I am the first person to admit that I will ask the surface level question too, especially like in the beginning when you're just kind of getting to know each other and feel one another out, kind of get the vibe, right? So I'll ask things like, are you a cat person or a dog person? Or what's your favorite color, type of music, subject in school? But I'll also dive in deeper with the topics that I know that are important to them. For example, to a football player, I might say, I sport ball 0. What's your favorite thing about playing football? How does it feel to step out on the field on a Friday night with all of those people looking at you? Or if I want to go a little bit deeper, hey, what's the best thing that you've learned about being a part of a team? And then finally, embracing some doing a little bit of market research. So in just a minute, we're going to meet Connor, and I'm going to help you understand why market research can actually be really integral to our connection and the session. So if I'm clueless about an interest of theirs, I will ask them to teach me about it. This is Connor, as I said, and here's what Connor's mom wrote. This is all that I had to go on before I got out of my car and met Connor. Here's what his mother wrote about him before our session. Connor has autism, and I was impressed with your article about neurodivergent teens. Thank you so much for that. He's excited at the idea of senior photos. Connor's into Dungeons and Dragons and history and has a great smile. Now, y'all know I don't know the first thing about D&D, but my kids sure do. So I did a little bit of market research prior to this session. I asked my kids. They helped me come up with a scheme to bring a 20-sided dice and have Connor roll for initiative at the beginning of the shoot. He was immediately engaged with me. He came right over to the trunk of my car, rolled the dice, and got a 20, the best roll you can get. I got a 1, the worst roll that you can get. So that meant that Connor won. And I had prepared for this scenario. So I made a story out of the session. I turned it into an adventure that he could get on board with. And that was helping him with some of his particular struggles. Neurodivergent autistic kids usually have a hard time engaging or keeping up with a conversation. But because I made it into a story and an adventure, he was invested. I told Connor we're going on an adventure. I was like, you've got a 6-second head start. I pointed him to where I wanted to go, and then I very loudly counted to 6 before I followed him in. So you guys, he just literally, he was giddy, like skipped right into the woods where we were heading for his senior session. So embracing somebody else's interest doesn't necessarily mean that you're committing to take them on yourself. I am not going to become a D&D player, and most of that knowledge just slipped right out of my head. Everything that my kids told me after this session, but it does mean that you need to leave space for them to share their excitement, and that comes through in all of the photos. So what was the end result about this? Well, Connor's mom was absolutely thrilled because he could actually engage with me and make eye contact with me, something that's really, really difficult for a lot of autistic kids. She was crying at the end of this session. She hugged me, right? And she said, you have made this day more special than I could ever have imagined. That huge payoff right there. Oh my gosh, this, just filled me up so much. Well, then what happened after that? She sent me 6 more referrals the very next year. And she continues to send me referrals every single year because she was so happy and satisfied with Connor's session. And just because I want to make sure we're covering all of our bases, we're going to talk about some general do's and don'ts in terms of communicating with teens. So I live and work in the Seattle area. I like to call all of our teens, we're all delightful little weirdos. They're a little crunchy, a little liberal. Sometimes they're very concerned about social justice and activism, right? They're all about like not fitting into a box while at the same time being very concerned with meeting society's expectations and pressures. They can be cranked to 11 most of the time, and they honestly have a lot more on their minds than we can imagine. So I want to let them know that I'm on their side, that they can breathe easy with me. Every bit of communication that I have with my seniors tells them I am safe and you can trust that I'm going to make you look good. So how do we do that? Let's go through some guidelines. Number one, don't add pressure about their often unknown future. So asking questions like, where are you going to college next year? What are you doing for the rest of your life? How many kids do you want? Okay, well, maybe not the last one. That would be a little bit extreme. But what I want you to remember is that these kids have hundreds of these questions coming at them every day. People started asking these kids in kindergarten, what are you going to be when you grow up, right, for the rest of your life? And their brains aren't even fully developed yet. And so you get to this point and like, God forbid the answer is, I don't know, right? Now they're thinking in their head that they are like behind some imaginary race of life to a finish line that's just getting farther and farther and farther away with each passing day. So avoid leading questions that add too much pressure. So if you want to ask about future plans, word it in a way that makes the space for all paths. Instead of saying, what college are you going to? You can say, you've just graduated. What are you going to do next? Right? Any idea what your next steps might be after graduation? And I'll usually be like, hey, no pressure if you just want to get there, right? I'll add a little disclaimer on that so that they don't feel pressured into a certain answer, certain path. Don't make assumptions, because we all have heard the adage, don't you know what happens when you assume things. So saying stuff like, do you have a boyfriend? Have you gotten your dress for the prom yet? Do you have a date for homecoming? Whatever, those sorts of things. This is Kate, and you wouldn't know it from this photo, but Kate is 6'1". Guess what Kate does not do? Kate doesn't play basketball. Guess what everyone has been asking Kate when they met her entire life? Oh, you must play basketball, right? It's a total eye roll moment for Kate because she's absolutely not interested in it. And it would be a missed opportunity for you to connect in a genuine way. So don't make assumptions. And don't cross the line. There's a time and place for really open, honest conversations, but remember that these humans are still minors and you are a business owner. This influences my language at the photo shoot, at the session, but it also influences heavily what I share on social media. So for example, I never post photos of like cute craft cocktails or make a joke about, oh, it's wine o'clock. I don't swear on social. I don't share very much ever about my personal life. Like I share that I have a family that I love very much. I have my kids, but I don't ever post any information about them without their expressed permission. I also don't communicate or meet with any client in an area that there's what we would call an assumption of privacy. We have photo shoots in public parks where there are other people around, or have consultations at coffee houses, and not like in my own personal home or somewhere where you're private. Setting these professional boundaries and standards for your interactions with minors keeps everything light and fun. As I mentioned, I used to mentor teens, so we have a list of, this is kind of like a hangover of best practices from if you're going to be working with teens and mandatory reporter and stuff like that. Okay, let's talk about some do's of communication. Please do ask for their pronouns. This is a common practice nowadays, and asking shows how much you care. Many companies have it included in their employees' bios. You can include it on your own senior intake form. It's a simple thing to answer, and it just shows consideration for our fellow humans. Do ask about their interest. What's your favorite thing to do in your downtime? Why? Do you have pets, right? This is David. David is an actor and sings and dances at our local theater and in some of those productions. And so his mom brought a prop microphone. And so I asked him to serenade me while swinging from a lamppost, kind of a la American in Paris. So ask about favorites or even least favorites, right? Like things that you loathe. Tell me about those. Those you always get a lot of passion and some really good answers coming from that. and do repeat their answers and back to them and follow up with follow-up questions. If you're like a lot of people, if you're like me, your brain is kind of maxed out most days. Repeating their answers back to them is going to do two things. Number one, it's going to show them that you were listening in the first place. That's key. But it also helps their answers stick in your brain. It's a memory hack. So just repeating things back helps you remember them. So then later, if you're going to go write a blog post or a senior feature all about their session, you're going to tell, people about how much fun you had or what you did. All those details from your connected conversations are going to be really fresh in your memory. And I also say, so does writing them down. I always I bring their intake forms with me. And as soon as I get in the car, before I even drive home, I'll just grab a pencil or pen and I'll jot down a handful of things, write on their intake form really quickly. So again, that I can remember what I want to say when I do a social media or a follow or halftime. Okay. All right. Halftime. I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause let's see, stop my share. I'm going to stop my screen share for just a second and pop in here. I need a human break for just some water for just a second. I see we don't have any questions. So I'm going to give like just 3 minutes if you need to grab a water, make a quick pit stop, whatever you need to do. And then we'll come back if I don't. And think if you have any questions, I'll answer questions about the first segment then, and then we'll move on to the next segment. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Give about 1 more minute. You guys can pop back in. My water. I've got a water with me now. All right, all right, all right. Katie said I'm 5'10". People still ask me if I played basketball in high school. Yeah, yeah, for
I
real,
hope
right?
that would end when I finish school and I still get asked. It's so annoying. I've had people actually say I bet you were a great basketball player. I'm like, it's a good thing you've never seen me play basketball. Like, I'm terrible. But yeah.
As everybody's coming back in, whew, I was talking fast. I was like, I need some water. I'm like, I got a lot to get through today. So, any questions about any of the first part? Like now you've had just a second to kind of maybe take a pause, digest some of your notes and whatnot. Any questions from the first section? All right. All right. Well, yeah, one more minute. There it is. 55. All right, that's our 5 minutes. So I will go back. I'm going to start my screen share back up and let's get into the back end. The back end, we're going to go through posing workflow. We're going to go through a lot of logistics and client booking and stuff like that. And then some special considerations for seniors as well. And that'll wrap up. That will wrap up our time. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to chat about posing. I use the word natural posing because I'm only posing in one of three ways, standing, sitting, or walking. People have really drastically different abilities when it comes to coordination and flexibility. So I say that I only instruct people to do the things that they would naturally do, right? We're not doing any of this like weird voguing with their arms. So I only instruct people to do things that they would naturally do. And then I'll vary the pose and add interest by using different lighting techniques, camera settings, or perspectives. So I always say natural movement is key. And this to me means the range of movement that a typical body is naturally capable of. My posing workflow then becomes more inclusive because it's taking all bodies into account, right? It's not just if you're a gymnast or, super flexible dancer or something like that. Okay. So I always tell people you need to begin, when you think about posing, you need to begin observing your subject long before you ever click the shutter, right? Watch how they naturally move and position themselves. Because one of the more challenging aspects of senior photography is that there's nobody else in the frame, right? You have to get that person in front of your lens to connect with you or at least your camera. So with each senior that I photograph, I use the exact same workflow and structure, and then I make a lot of micro adjustments based on how I see them moving naturally. And using that same workflow and having that structure allows me to then get more connected with them. And first, one more thing to note just before we dive into the posing workflow. As you can probably tell, I don't give a lot of hard and fast rules about many things, but I will strongly advise that when you're directing your senior into certain poses, that you never tell them that they're doing something wrong. Even if they are, even if a pose is clearly not working and you can't make micro adjustments to make it work, snap one picture, just move on, take the responsibility yourself, say you're not crazy about the light, oh, the background's not showing up really great here, anything other than telling that senior that they failed at a certain pose. Some poses will come really naturally to certain bodies and some won't, right? But no matter what type of person you have in front of your camera, you still have to stay positive and encouraging with them throughout the entire shoot. People often tell me that they look at my work and they're like, oh, it looks like you just had a really great time, or, you made their personality shine. And I've even heard some people say, oh, I just love those candid moments that you capture. You guys, if you've been around as a photographer for any amount of time, you know that while my seniors might look completely relaxed and comfortable, this is because I was constantly directing and planning for these moments. It was all intentional on my part. So I'm going to walk you through a posing workflow, the posing workflow that I utilize for each of my seniors. I would suggest that you just start kind of observing some poses that you like as well. You can create a folder on your phone or screenshot when you see something cute on Instagram that you like or want to try, or even make a Pinterest board. And if you don't have a great memory, right, or you tend to get a little deer in the headlights, like when you're actually on the shoot, it's totally fine to write out your poses on a note card or on your phone, on an index card, and bring along with you, especially if it's kind of like, first few senior photo shoots. They'll appreciate the fact that you planned ahead just for them. It's not going to look like amateur hour, I promise. So, as I said, I do 3 types of poses: standing, seated, and walking poses. We'll start with the standing poses because these are usually the ones that that we do end up starting off with. They're the simplest. With standing poses, it's crucial that you always set the feet in place first. I start the photo shoot by telling my seniors that unless I tell them to specifically, they should never stand and look directly at me, right? Never square your shoulders up at me or stand with parallel feet. And every time we pose, we're going to pose on an angle. So, I'm sure you've heard the generalization before: if it bends, bend it. Right? So I'll tell somebody, I'll say, okay, lean in towards me, bend in a little bit from your hip. Okay, pop a foot or a knee, cross one foot over the other. So I'll start a standing pose out, positioning the feet, and then making all the micro adjustments from the bottom up. I'll tell seniors to give themselves a hug, right? That gets you this really, it's just a really pretty way to pose the hands. Especially if someone doesn't have long hair or something else, for interest, right? I say give it a self hug. This is also better for girls than like crossing your arms, because crossing arms looks bulky right through here, and it's kind of awkward too for women sometimes. If they're wearing like flowy clothing, I'll tell them to just shift from side to side while they're standing there, swing your dress or your skirt. And then I'll also play a lot in standing poses with hand placement. So you can move their hands if they've got a jacket to the collar. I'll tell them to put their hand on the back of their neck, on their hips, in their pockets. I'll say, play with your hair, catch your hair right here. And these are all micro adjustments that I do based on a standing pose. I'll tell seniors to cross their arms over their chest, put one hand in a pocket, or both hands in their pocket. Like I said, scratch the back of your neck, switch pockets, front pockets, back pockets. And then I have a rule for always for hands in any type of pocket is that the full hand never goes in the pocket, right? So either thumbs out or fingers out. They can either hook their thumbs in the pocket or put their fingers in and leave their thumbs out. But it looks really weird to have like a whole hand in a pocket or a hoodie or something like that. I'll tell seniors while they're standing to turn slightly away from me, right? And then look back over their shoulder at me. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll add the arm with it as well on the back side. Sometimes I'll add the arm on the front side. And that just adds some interest to a typical standard pose. This pose in the middle is one that I call drink the sun. So this is when, like, in the summertime, we have really long days. I guess you guys probably do too, because you're so far north. So we have really long days in the summer. We get a ton of sunlight. And so, that when we actually get that really bright, intense sunlight in Seattle, I want to capture that as well. So I direct them into full sun. I tell them to close their eyes and lift their chin towards the light. And I said, I just want you to breathe in. I was like, just breathe in all the sun's warmth and glory right now. And the neutrality of their face when I have them do that is really great. Now, if you told somebody to, to like make a neutral face, right? They can't. It's really difficult. But telling them to, hey, just come over here and breathe and drink the sun for a minute. That one goes over really well. That's a very easy standing pose to execute. And then I'll tell them to break the rules. I'll be like, hey, you remember I told you at the beginning not to ever, square your shoulders at me and not to have your feet parallel and pointed straight towards me. Now I want you to do all of that. Square off your body straight at me. Put your thumbs in your front pockets, elbows back, chin slightly elevated. And then I'll say, okay, now no smile. and then stare right into the lens. And I'll be like, okay, you got to work the smolder, right? And then I'll be like, oh my gosh, it was so intense. And then I'll say that and it'll make them giggle, right? They can't help it. And I'll snap that picture too. So that's a breaking the rules kind of standing pose. Let's talk about seated poses. I do a lot of seated poses too. And sometimes I'll even do like half seated or perched shots. These I would actually start with seniors who might be a little bit more, they seem a little more shy, right? Is having something to lean on, perch on, sit. It's supporting them literally, right? But it's also supporting them emotionally, right? So that they can get in a place they feel like they're okay, they're supported a little bit right here. So sometimes I switch up if I'll start standing first or seated first, and it depends on the location a little bit as well, but it also depends on the senior. But these are comfortable, they're natural, and they're usually, like I said, can be a good warm-up for a shy senior. Rocks, driftwood, park benches, stairs, picnic tables, a lot of times, fences, railings, sculptures. I will instruct kids to go sit on any of these and if it'll hold still, I'll sit them on it. You can have them lean and perch against the side of a building and get some shallow depth of field shots. And you can also take the same seated pose, right? I didn't change anything about the pose on this, but I've got two very different angles by, stepping in with a closer lens and then pulling back. And she again is just in just a regular seated pose, and I can move around her. And instead of moving her, I can move me, or I honestly could have changed the light and shot this in a completely different way. The sun is back behind her. I could have done a silhouette in that, right? And just had her face the exact same spot. So you can swing out wide and get full body shots even in seated poses. And with any seated pose, I'll always also direct them to lean in and engage me or look at my lens. Or sometimes if I'm feeling good, or like if for senior guys, this works really well. It actually works for both. If their mom is, kind of hovering like a little bit close or whatever, I'll be like, okay, now look over at your mom. And this is what I told Addie to do here. And I said, okay, now look over at your mom and laugh at her face. And she laughed at her mom's face, right? Beautiful, connected, you could just see so much joy and what have you. And so yeah, I'll tell them to I'll say, I'm not funny. Look here and laugh at my face. Now look at your mom and laugh at her face. And it always works really well. Guys will typically sit comfortably on just about anything. And when they do, I always make sure to compliment them on that. I'll say, okay, go sit over there, just go sit down. And most of the time I always tell them, I'm like, you're too tall for me. I'm only 5'5". And so, I'm like, okay, go sit on this rock. You're too tall for me. And then they sit down and I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, how did you do that? I was like, it's just so natural. It's perfect. I don't even have to do anything or say anything. And you just crushed it. And as soon as I say that to them, their confidence just goes straight through the roof, right? Even if I do have to adjust some things, their confidence goes, and then they get like a really good, genuine smile out of them. And then I'll say, oh, and I'll be like, oh, okay, can you, then I'll like add just a little micro adjustment or whatnot, right? Like, so I'll get the good smile, and then I'll be like, okay, now, put your hand through your hair, or do something like this. And then they'll start making those little micro adjustments in how they sit. They usually do a really good job with seated poses because I'm not making them too complicated. Seated poses are also really great with pictures with dogs. Everybody loves their puppy snuggles. And so this is always a favorite. Usually it's more like the senior and then the puppy is in their lap, but this was a Great Dane. So she's basically sitting in his lap. And I thought that was really cute. But yeah, everybody loves puppy pictures. And if they want to bring their dog with them, I like to get several pictures with the dog as well. Okay. Let's move on to walking poses. These are the most difficult to pull off, but they can also produce the most fun images, right? Because that's one of the best ways to take an image from, feeling kind of static to feeling more connected is by adding some movement into it, right? And you add movement and it gets really interesting. So I always tell these kids, I'll say, I know you've been walking your entire life, but now I'm going to teach you how to model walk. And then I say, don't worry, this is the most complicated thing that we're going to do the whole time, I promise. And then I also set the expectation and I say, we're going to do it more than once so that I can get it on both of my camera bodies. I shoot with a body on each hip in a double harness. And so I say, I have to get it on both cameras. I set this expectation in advance because I want them to know that I'm going to ask them to do it again before they've done it the first time. So they don't think that their second request is because they did it wrong the first time, right? And it probably will be wrong the first time. And so I always just say, I'm going to get this on both bodies. So I want you to, walk towards me, right? Walking poses, like I said, can be the most difficult to shoot. And I'll use a higher continuous shutter on this for the best results. Some people shoot like that anyway. Some people do or don't. For a walking shot, yeah, it like having a good shutter will help you not miss. Having a continuous shutter on help you not miss any of the moments. So for the model walk, like I said, I say you've been walking your whole life, but now I'm going to teach you how to model walk. All right. I instruct them to slowly walk towards me like they're walking on a balance beam, and I tell them to cross one foot in front of the other. Okay. And I tell them to do this very, very slowly. I'll keep them moving slowly, but constantly. And then we're going to add interest by putting their hands in their hair and pockets, making jokes, instructing them. And I'll say, stop, stop when they get, really close. And then I'll have them go back and I'll say, okay, do the exact same thing all over again. And then that second time I'll say, okay, now I'm going to make it really complicated for you. And I'm going to teach you what I call the eye drive-by. And say, okay, now you know what to do with your feet. We're going to do this eye drive-by. This is the most complicated it gets, I promise. So I tell them to start looking down on their left, right? And take a step, look up at the tops of the trees, take a step, catch a piece of your hair, look at me, take a step, look to your right, laugh at the rock, right? And so I always say, you're just going to make a parabola with your face, where as you're walking, you're moving up and over like a big arch right through. As you walk, start looking down at your left, take a step, look at the top of the trees. And then I'll say, okay, now once they're getting kind of close to me, I'll say, stop and give yourself a hug. All right, lean in, look directly at me. Take a step, look to your right, laugh at that rock, laugh at my face, laugh at your mom's face, right? And that's how you execute a walking pose sequence that is a lot more connected and less chaotic. There is one note that I want to make sure to add with walking poses. A particularly popular pose prompt, especially with senior girls, is to instruct them to walk like they're drunk. It's silly and it gets a laugh, right? It can actually, I've seen it create some fun photos, but I tend to avoid this one because there's a couple of implications that come with it. One, it's implying that they know what it would feel like to be drunk or that they've been seeing others acting drunk. That's not really a compliment. And two, it lacks control, right? When they start flinging their bodies around, it's, especially if they're wearing heels or something like that, you have a really high chance of having them like slip or fall or, mess up their hair, like a handful of stuff like that. So I can't control that pose very well. So I simply don't do it for walking poses. And then the last pose of every single session that I do, if mom or dad, whichever parent is there, I'll always grab like mom right at the end of the session for a photo with her kid. Mom will always protest this and she will always love the end result. And I just say every time, I said, don't worry about this. No one has to see this but you and me. And I said, I just know that in my house, I'm always the one behind the camera and I want you to have one picture with your kid. And so mom will go over and they'll, like they're straightening up and they're and stand there and they do the, like the nice nod and smile, very static, right? No emotion. And then I'll shout at the senior and I'll be like, all right. And so I was like, all right, Connor, give your mom a giant bear hug. And let me tell you, these kids go for it when you give them permission to just do that. I mean, like I've had like these 6 foot tall, almost grown men. They just want to tuck their mama right into their arms and bear hug her for all that she's worth, or headlock, or something like that. These are just always my most favorite photos of the session. And so I always include that at the end. And so I always yell, give her mom a big bear hug. And that's how I execute the entirety of opposing workflow. Okay. All right. I am going to pause right here, stop share, and see. I'm going to just open it up really quickly before I move on to the next section. Questions on posing and posing workflow. Okay, wow. It's like bedtime for y'all, right? Okay. All right, all right. If we don't have any questions, then I'm gonna keep rocking and rolling. I love
Can
it.
I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is this working? About something you said before. You talked about only meeting a client in a public place, but what if they want to do it at their home? Like, we all know people here who live on farms or whatever, and they want to do it
Yeah.
at their home. So how do you handle that?
Yeah. So what you would be doing with that is making sure that in your communication,
Mm.
mom, dad, sisters, grandma, caretaker, whomever, that they are there. You
Okay.
won't. I would say, and actually, yeah, no, this is a really good point to make. Never go to a teenager's home if it is going to be just you and that teenager in that home. That is like, you don't want to put yourself in that position ever.
Right. Yeah.
So yes, you can do it right in their home, in their backyard. I don't photograph anything inside, and that's the other piece. But so like out in the yard, like on the farm, on the property, around the building, right? Just make sure that there are other adults who
Yeah.
are there,
That makes sense.
or bring an assistant with you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Hire a teenager or something, who can come, like hang out and just be like, oh, they're gonna carry my stuff, be my Sherpa, or or whatever, or mom friend, somebody like that,
Okay.
who could come
Perfect.
and who could help you with that. So yes, don't ever
Thank you.
go to a teenager's home and have it be just the two of you. Don't accept or give car rides with them. So they shouldn't be getting in your car at any point. Honestly, that's like an insurance thing, right? Like, your business insurance is probably good, but you can't control if somebody else, wrecks into you and stuff like that. But again, that being alone in a car, you shouldn't do that either. So, and were not necessarily photography rules. Those came out of working with, in schools, and like with the nonprofit that I did and stuff like that. Like, human resources has very, very well defined rules for like background checks and for what we have to do in terms of mandatory reporting, and then our interactions and stuff like that. And so I brought all of those over into my business, because they are there to protect minors from any scary situations. And as a business owner, I want to have that same protection for myself as well, because I never want to even be in a situation where somebody could say it's her word against somebody else's.
Yeah. No,
Right?
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what I figured, but okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. I've never had that question, so I'm going to add that in too, because yeah, that's a helpful thing. My best friend lives up in Connecticut, in Litchfield, and she goes to to like farms and like properties and stuff like that all the time for like babies and newborns and stuff. So okay. All right, let me
Thank
pop
you.
back on. Thank you. That was a great question. Thank you, Lee. Okay. Let's pop back on here, and we're going to talk about some of the logistics for my client booking process, packages, and pricing. We're going to go through a handful of these. So one way that you can build consistency in your business is having a regular and repeatable process for how seniors can come in and book your services. This earns you, basically, it's allowing you to earn money while saving you time. Just this year, I had a mom who said to me, well, last season, this school year, I had a mom who said to me at the session, I booked you specifically because your website was the easiest to navigate and schedule. After I read the client guide, she's like, I was just prepared. She said, I knew everything that needed to go on. And this is without me having to go back and forth with her multiple times. So I'll walk you through my booking process. Like I said, it makes me money and saves me time. So the first step in my booking process is that someone visits my Squarespace website. That's who I use. I know that there are lots of different applications you can use. I use Squarespace because it has a lot of the features that I want all in one place without me having to run multiple programs to handle all my email campaigns and everything else. So this is the inquiry phase. Somebody visits my Squarespace website. And well, actually, let me back up just a little bit. I want you to think about your own website as well with this. So think about what kind of process you have for getting senior clients in your door. Can they book you immediately? Do they have to send you an email and then wait for you to send them an email back and then check availability? Oh, pick a date, email prices, contract, right? Going back and forth, or can they get everything that they need without ever having to leave your site? So as I said, my booking process allows my dream clients, who I'm communicating with in all of my messaging, they can come and onto my website and they can book me directly, and then they can go about the rest of their busy lives, right? We are all too busy, and moms of teenagers, me having a senior right now this year and then having another senior next year, I can tell you this is a whole different ballgame than I've ever been like privy to. My mind has been maxed out. And if I had to spend a week emailing back and forth or getting this and that, it wouldn't be effective for me, right? Sometimes I just don't do things if I have to like make a phone call or send 6 emails to get it accomplished. It just doesn't happen, right? So we need to think about our clients and about how busy their lives are as well. So on my site, seniors simply have to click a book now button, and then they can select their session date and time, type of session. They can complete their intake form and agree to all of my disclaimers. They can immediately pay their deposit. And then they have their receipt, and their client guide is emailed to them immediately. So they've taken care of all of that. Later, as we get closer to the session date, I'll invoice them for their balance. And in that same email, I'll give them their location options. And then finally, I will send one confirmation email the week of the photo shoot, a final confirmation. So all of those steps, except for the last 2, are completely automated. And I sit back and watch my season and my calendar fill up with my dream clients without having to do a single email back and forth. For those last 2 steps, about 3 weeks before the shoot, I think is usually, no, I think I'm at 2 weeks. 2 weeks before, I'll invoice them for their session balance, right? And this reminds them what type of session they booked and lets them know that I'll be contacting them again the week of their shoot. I do live in the Pacific Northwest, so rain and reschedules, especially as we get into October, are really, like, the weather can really be prohibitive because I'm all outdoors and all natural light. I told them that their balance is due 1 week prior to the session. There's no money awkwardness at the shoot. I want money to be the farthest thing from their mind and from mine, so we can all just relax and have a great time. I don't want to be thinking about like, oh, are they gonna actually pay the rest of their session fee or anything. And at this point, I'll also include any questions that I might have about special circumstances. So for example, if they listed other for location or had a note about bringing, a specific prop that I've never worked with before or something like that, I'll include some follow-up questions there. So the week of the photo shoot, I will send an email with the date and time confirmation. I have all of this templated out, so I'm not having to rewrite, emails, finalize their location choice. And I always include at this point my cell phone number, and I say very specifically with my cell phone number in case you need to text me on the day. so that I don't communicate to them that they are free to just call me whenever they want to. Yeah, this has come up many times. For me, that back in the early days, I didn't have these boundaries that were really well set, and so I would have people calling me whenever, on weekends, Sundays, and evenings and stuff, times when I wasn't working. This is a business for me. This is my job. This is all that I do, but I have set, working hours too, just like any other business. And so this helps me kind of enforce some of those boundaries, having this booking and workflow. Finally, on the day of the session, I will bring their senior intake form with me. I will actually photograph the session, and then I'll post like a boomerang on stories or something, if their model release was agreed to, and I'll have that little intake form with me as well. And so immediately after the session, I'll take notes, as I mentioned earlier, on that intake form, because I never remember it otherwise. And then I've got all that person's information in one place. So this is how I book from start all the way through, and how I run from start to session for a senior client. Okay, I'm going to talk about my client intake form for a minute here. This is honestly, it has grown and evolved over time, and I really love everything that this document does for me. As I mentioned back here, that contract and intake form are completed and they pay their deposit, and that's the only way that they are actually reserving a date on my calendar. And so this client intake form will pop up. The client intake form gives me information on their personal details, right? So, for taxes and stuff like this, I didn't used to collect addresses at the very beginning. And then when I have to go back and pay sales taxes on these things, the sales tax is dependent on what the address is, right? And all, a whole bunch of details that I didn't really know in the beginning to collect. So it's senior name. I do ask preferred pronouns on my intake form. Again, I think that's just, I think it's just a courteous thing to do. And sometimes they are different than what you would assume, with a lot of gender fluidity now with the Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Personal details, what school they go to, Instagram handle if they want to be tagged, if they have a model release and they want me to tag them on things, parents' information, email, phone number they can be reached at on the session date, a handful of personal details. They select their package on their client intake form. So I already know how much money I'm going to make in that session. They select the type of location, not usually the specific location. I have mine divided into cityscape. So that's going to be like more of like an urban, like building. There'll just be buildings and building texture around. I have cityscape, waterfront, field, and mountain, because where I am in Seattle, you can, I'm in the Cascade foothills, but you can drive 30 minutes and you're at the Puget Sound. So, we have a really nice variety of locations. And then I do list other as an option. And sometimes people will have something really specific that they want. Like, somebody this year, their son is a pilot, and they're like, we want to do this at the airfield. Cool. And so there's a spot down at the bottom where it's like, if there are any other little details, anything else you need. So location selection, their upsells and package additions as well. So usually just a plain family session is $850 with me. And for my seniors, I will let them add a family session on for, I think it's like $350 or something. And it's just like 15 to 20 minutes. And I just say, bring the whole family. We'll do the whole family first. And this does two things. Number one, it upsells and can almost guarantee me that for very little effort, right? Like 15 to 20 more minutes worth of work, I can earn another $350. So that's an upsell. And the other thing it does is it sets the expectation that family photos are extra and included, and also that they're a standard thing. So it's power of suggestion, right? It's upsell, and it's expectation setting that I don't have families show up, everybody in their coordinating outfits with their senior, and say, can we just get a few more, can we just get a few family photos, right? So nobody does that to me. I don't have families show up and say, like, can we just do this? Can we just do this? It's right there on that intake form, so they know that this is a charge. so I have that for family photos, and I also have that for senior videos. And senior videos, again, that's like power of suggestion, is saying like, do you want a senior film? Do you want to add it on to this session date, or do you want to add it on to a different set date? And so I've got all of that. It's right there on that client intake form, and it's just tick boxes, right, that are super easy. I have all of my disclaimers. Disclaimers for me operate as a contract, but they also are operating as expectation setting and just good communications, and establishing my boundaries. So it's things like, what does artistic work mean? What is my rescheduling policy? What artistic work does it, deliverables, right? I have the model release on here. I have a pet agreement on there as well. And all of those disclaimers at the bottom, you only have the option to agree to all of the disclaimers except for the model release and the pet agreement. So the model release, you can either agree or disagree. That's anybody's choice. If they want, to allow model release for their own image, that's everybody's individual thing. And then the pet agreement, I have it basically says like, if your pet damages something like myself or others, you'll be responsible for that. A friend of mine had a dog do some damage to her personally. And so, it was an unruly pet situation. And so I was like, whoa, learn from that one. I don't want that to happen, to me, especially when sometimes I get really big, big dogs and stuff like that. But the pet agreement, the choices that people have on that one is, I agree and I am bringing a pet, or I agree and I am not bringing a pet. Right. So everybody has to, agree that they know that that's the thing. And again, it's also setting expectation, and it lets me know what to expect on the session date. Okay. So for this last little bit, I want to talk in this section about actual offers. And so, like, we're kind of always thinking about what our senior wants or needs. And so for my seniors, it turns out one size doesn't really fit all. Right. And so I like to tailor the experience to, to kind of these different individuals. So I've come down to 3 packages that offer slightly different levels of attention and benefits. So each package gets all of their digitals. So I am all inclusive. I know different people work in different models, but what varies is the length of time that we're on the shoot together, how many different outfits they have, and how much hand holding is required prior to the shoot. So the Cascade photo shoots are popular with seniors who I always say, oh, this is, short and sweet. These are the ones who are a little camera shy, maybe. This is the uncomplicated, no fuss kind of shoot that senior guys love. I don't offer anything that I would term a mini session, although this is a very short session. I don't offer a mini session because then people would be booking up my dates. And I wouldn't basically, I wouldn't be making, wouldn't be making money off of a 15-minute session. So Cascade is the smallest one, and it's 2 outfits. The Olympic is by far my most popular package, and it includes the senior favorite, which is a mobile app. And I say a lot of seniors like this package because the choice of 3 outfits gives them the space to cover more of their interest and personalities. And then the Rainier package is the most expensive, but it's actually the best value when you factor in all the extras, additional outfits and time, mobile app, and senior custom album is included in the Rainier package. And so I always say this is for those seniors who want the Rainier sized experience for their senior photos. So in case you can't, well, actually, if you don't know the Pacific Northwest geography, Cascade Mountains, right? It's a little smaller. Olympic, a little bigger. Rainier, obviously, is the huge mountain that we see all over Seattle. And then, let me see. Okay. Okay. The other thing that I add on each of these is a little label or subtitle within each package that's based on some consumer psychology. So for the Cascade, when I say it's short and sweet, for the Olympic, I say most popular, right? Kids at this age, they just want to know what their friends are doing, right? And so if you say this is the most popular package, that's the one. Whatever you put most popular on, that's the one that they are going to go for. And then I actually label my biggest package the best value. Again, people like value. They want to know that they're getting the most for, for their dollar. And so I label that one the best value. So I'm going to go a little bit more into the numbers and pricing structure right there. But just adding those 3 little words helped my seniors and their families to kind of better understand their options. This year, I even had a parent who told me, she was like, I felt like no matter which package I chose, I was just getting the best thing for me. And this was after I'd had her 3rd kid. And I don't even know if any of the 3 kids picked the same package, you know, over the years that I had them. And so, you know, she's like, every time, whichever package I chose, I felt like that was the best fit for that kid. So, here are the packages listed out in detail. You can also find this, it's on my website. I do list prices. I know that some people don't. Pricing is a really personal part of our business, and there are a lot of different models and methods that you can utilize. I list prices because I don't have time to send somebody a quote, you know, for every little thing or whatnot. I'm like, no, this is what my prices are. If somebody is price shopping me and they decide to click right off of my website, I'd rather them do it then than send me 3 emails and down the road for me to say, oh, well, here's my prices. Okay, well, then they're just going to ghost you. So I like having that visibility. And I feel like it resonates really well with my target audience as well. So the cascade, as you can see, we label that short and sweet, 2 outfits, 25 plus images presented in color and black and white. I think I am a chronic overshooter and really, really over deliver, especially now that I use Imagine AI as my editor. I think I think 50 photos is probably the smallest I've ever given for that package. But they usually don't know that. I'm just like, oh, I just gave you some extras. Don't tell anybody. And so they really feel like they've been over delivered too. It's 25 images. It's up to a 45-minute photo session. I usually run about 20 to 25 minutes per outfit. And so we only have to have time for 1 outfit change in between there. So 45 minutes gives us plenty of time to get that done. All digital files are included, as I mentioned. Choice of photo for yearbook, size for submission, that's included in every single package. There's spring mini sessions. I'm going to talk about those in the special considerations section, but that's included. And then I give them a little discount on the album, just so that they feel like, you know, like that's a print thing. And I make a lot of money off of albums. So, you know, like it's just a little bonus to throw a little bit of a discount in there on their album. Olympic jumps up to $7.45, 75-minute photo session. I again label this most popular, 3 outfits, 40 plus images. I give tons more than that. And then some of the same pieces, and that includes a mobile app, which I do through Shootproof, who's my gallery provider. And then the Rainier session, again, I label that best value, up to 4 outfits. This adds in the mobile app and a custom 10 spread 8x10 photo album. So with the pricing, for me, pricing is based off of my time investment because that's what works and makes the most sense for me. So the way that I come up with these numbers, it wasn't just, you know, just throwing it out there. My Cascade package actually represents about 2, maybe 3 hours of work total for me. So you take that 45-minute photo session, you know, you count a little bit of commute time there, a little bit of commute time back. How much time does it take me to upload, to cull, to edit, upload to the gallery, send out the finished package and stuff like that. My total time investment on a senior who does a Cascade package is going to be, usually it's only about 2 hours. Sometimes I'll be generous and I'll say up to 3 hours. So at a $600 price tag, just doing rough math at $300, that's $200 per hour. That's my hourly working rate. And I'm very, very happy with a $200 per hour working rate. So that works well for me with my pricing. The Olympic package really only adds about half an hour total of work because all of those other processes are still kind of the same. And so that one, the hourly rate comes down to about 185, I think, in terms of my investment. The Rainier package is obviously where I spend the most time and it's the most hassle for me. And honestly, sometimes I'm just like, I would just rather they not even book this package because I have to go back and do the album and stuff like that. It's okay. but they do. And so I obviously, I charge over $1,000 a session for that. But it's actually also the best value for them as well. These sessions represent like a 6-hour time investment for me. And so my hourly rate on that one has dropped down to about $175 per session. I'll spend about, like I said, about 6 hours. So this is my base pricing, and this is how this is where I start with every senior. I'm happy if I walk away from any senior session. If I make $600 tonight, I'm happy with that, right? And so you have to kind of figure out for you and for your business what makes the most sense, what your area can support, right? Do some some demographic information. You can look at demographics to see, like what your area will support. I don't advise going and looking at someone else's pricing or packages, because their pricing is going to be based on a different model. I would just actually look at like your area demographics, and those are things that you know from like census studies and stuff like that. You can look up to see if your area can support this, like a certain price or a different price. And then I have upsells, as I mentioned before, that are added on there. So so Senior Plus this is the family offering. And so if they add family photos to their senior session, and again, I've got that power of suggestion. It's on the intake form. It's a really easy yes for them when they're only having to pay the deposit. It doesn't change the total that's due that day. It changes it for later. I say an extra 15 additional images is for your immediate family, all the digital files, and up to 25 minutes extra time in front of the camera. I almost never have to spend 25 minutes with a family in order to get a good coverage for, probably more like 25 to 30 extra images. I usually don't deliver just 15. And I put that in my on my website. I directly impose next to it what the cost for a full family session for me is. And the cost for a full family session is $850 for your immediate family only. And then extended family is $1,250, because extended family, we end up doing, a lot more work with that. So I want them to see the value in just adding it on when you're with your senior session, as opposed to having it at another point in time. And that's another day that I have to book something. So this is a way that I can increase the value of that one senior. The other way that I can increase the value of a senior is by adding on a video. I love adding videos. I have whole courses about it in different ways, but if I add on a video to the session, it's $950, I think. And if I add it on a different day, then it's like $1,550. So the adding on a video and family session can take a $600 senior investment up to $1,500 or $2,000 pretty quickly. If you want to, if you just do that. So I have those available, and it's built in, kind of to my pricing model, so that's just gravy, and I'm adding on all these little pieces. Okay. Now we're going to talk about all the little extras. I think I can get through this in about 10 minutes. So we've got some time for questions at the end. These are the little senior specific considerations that don't necessarily apply to other genres. So the yearbook photo is going to be one. Now, some schools will allow you to do this. Some schools will not. Some schools will insist that you use their photographer or like your ASB photo. It is really common practice here. We graduate maybe about 3,000, graduate about 3,000 seniors a year within like a 5-mile radius of my house. So I'm in a highly populated area. All of the schools that are here allow seniors to bring their own yearbook photos and turn their own stuff in. So you just have to kind of look what their different requirements are for each school. Most schools will say that it has to be in portrait orientation and that there's no black and white. There's some little differences about like exact sizing requirements. And the deadlines for these are often in early fall, so that they can actually get them in the yearbook, because, yearbook, they work on that all year long. So the deadline for senior photos is often early in the fall. I have those starting as early as October the 1st and running as late as February the 1st for one of my schools that's in the area. And I guarantee you no one is anywhere in the Pacific Northwest in December and January taking outdoor photos for their seniors. That's got to be a studio thing. You can't do that here in the outdoors. Yeah, so watch your deadlines on yearbook photos. Different requirements for different schools. Those will be usually posted on their website, or they'll email them out to the seniors. And so you can just say, to a parent, if you have a parent of a child at a new school that you don't have, you haven't worked with before, you can say, oh, whatever. And that's one of the reasons why I ask what school they go to on their intake form, because then I know what their yearbook requirements and when their yearbook deadlines are. I even post, I say, here's some common ones that are close by. Say Lake Washington is this and whatever. Next step mini sessions. So as I mentioned earlier, these are included in every senior package. And this is a day in the spring prior to the May 1st decision day, when I invite the kids out for a mini session. I schedule them on 2 days. I'm very tight about my specifications on this, and I tell them, and my messaging on it. So what I tell them is that, whatever your next steps are after graduation, I want to celebrate that. Or you can wear your cap and gown kind of thing, right? I don't call these college t-shirt sessions, but that's essentially what they are. It's a good way to help you get like an updated headshot for graduation announcements, and decision day, May 1st, is also like a big thing on social media. And so I got tired of seeing, kids post really crappy photos. Sorry, they'd post really bad photos of, of their, like their mom took of them, at 7 o'clock before they left for school, and they look like a Smurf because the white balance is so off and whatever. And so I was like, let me just give you a good photo of this. It's included in the package. It takes me very minimal effort to just stack these kids up one by one by one. I have and I'll make a note of this. I have a link to a blog post I wrote about it that really explains the next step minis in detail, and I'll add that link to your resources after the class. And sometimes I also will I will give them the option, not sometimes, most of the time, I'll give them the option to do cap and gown, especially if, like some kids weren't going to do spirit wear. It depends on what the delivery date for cap and gowns are. Sometimes schools, the seniors don't actually have their cap and gown yet by the April mini sessions. I tell them that they must iron and steam their gown. That is huge. Please make sure to communicate that with them, because they will just bring it straight in that little plastic bag and it'll look horrible. But these are also really great for graduation announcements, and they're a lot of fun as well. Ooh. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Let me, this is the last one that I'll do. Sometimes I'll do a slideshow for a grad party. Or you can even, like I said earlier, do a full senior video. I made these little slideshow videos for my class of 2020 students. I did it for free for them, but then moving forward, I could charge for it, because we were shut down during their spring sessions. So I didn't get the opportunity to do their next step sessions. We, in Washington, were shut down fully for 3 months, and we weren't allowed to have any sessions at all. So these are so popular that now seniors will pay for them to add them to their package. And any way that you can add video is highly desirable, right? That's a really nice and easy way to share stuff for your seniors. So this will kind of give you an idea for like a senior session, what a slideshow video looks like, but it's also going to give you an idea of what I deliver from a typical session. Because during the pandemic, I already photographed all of the class of 2020 kids in the fall, and then in the spring, when I couldn't work, I just pulled the work that I had from them and repackaged it and made it into something else that they could share. So I am going to push play on this, and the music is not terribly relevant, but the music is on there. And so I'm going to be quiet so that you can actually watch the video. Okay. What questions do you have? That's all she wrote from me. I'll stop my share so that I can see all of this. Okay. Questions, thoughts, anything? Let's go. What do you use to make the videos with? The slideshow videos, I used Animoto. When I make actual senior films, I use Adobe Premiere Pro. Yeah, I edit everything in Premiere Pro. Let me get, just waiting. Anybody else have any last thoughts? We
I'm
all
just
like,
wondering, yeah, I'm just wondering how long it takes you to put a video together.
like a slideshow like that,
Yeah.
I think I did about 25 of those, and it just took me, it just took me a couple of days. I think one of those videos, because so I give them a questionnaire to fill out, for those slideshow videos. I give them a questionnaire to fill out for those, and, those probably just take me like 20-25 minutes to knock those together. It's not very long, with Animoto. I use that. I think Fundy has some slideshow-ish options now. I could be wrong. Canva actually has really up their game on availability for that. And if you have Pro, I think you can use their music. I like Animoto for a slideshow video because then I can use their music library, right, without having to pay any additional music licensing.
Okay.
Videos that I do, like actual senior feature films and stuff like that. It this is really just honestly ridiculously simple. Is that I have an editor now that I send those out to, and it costs me $100, and I make $1,000 minimum on those videos. And so my time investment put into that is probably about 30 minutes, because I have to upload the files, I have to write the instructions to them, and to tell them, like, hey, like, do this, do this, do this, do this. I have a standard set of instructions that I include. They've worked with me enough now to know that. And yeah, when I teach video and I tell people, I'm like, no, I charge
Okay.
$1,000 for this thing that takes me 30 minutes and $100. And they're just like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's that adding video. I have a whole class about video, and I love it. But so yeah, slideshows 20-25 minutes. That's Animoto. Premiere Pro for the full films. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anybody else, any other questions for the good of the cause?
I just wanted to say it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love watching everybody's face over So y'all can probably tell, I like watching everybody while you're going through this. And because I'm so used to being on like the other side, like of the Zoom and stuff like that too. And so it's fun. It's fun to do it, to teach this way. So I liked it. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, if there aren't any other questions, like I said, if you went to, here, why don't I just drop the link in here too. I'm gonna drop the link in the chat. Everyone please. There. And if you go there and leave me your email address, and I'll send you the two guides, the posing guide and the one for poses that I avoid. And I'll also send you the link to the next step mini sessions that like really explains really well what those are and kind of how I communicate that information to my seniors. Okay. Other than that, DM me on Instagram if you have any other thoughts, wild last moment pieces. And other than that, I hope y'all have a great rest of your evening or a good night's sleep.
You
Thank you
too.
very
Thanks so
much.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Have
so
a good
much.
night.
Bye.
Thank you, y'all. Bye
Bye.
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 Mary, are you still there? Hi. I've got your check ready. I'll mail it out tomorrow. There was no mail today because of Juneteenth.
Yeah, Juneteenth.
Couldn't get it out.
Yeah.
So,
No worries about. Do you have my address? Did I give you my address?
I have 177 21st. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
yeah.
right.
So I'll get that
Thank
out.
you.
now.
Thank you, Natasha, for this. This was so fun. And what a great group, too.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
fun because we had a couple new people that had joined. So you're actually the first class that they got to be in, which is really cool too. And it was
Yay.
it was a great start. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I hope you have a great summer.
Yeah, you too. Again, thank you. And I'm glad I just got a message from one of the members that they couldn't click onto the link and I didn't see it till just now. So I'm like, oh,
Oh, no.
I'm
Well,
glad we got it recorded. But
there's a recording. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
all
a
right.
recording.
Thanks again very much.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.